some stuff really fast, and then I'm going to slow down. He said the last thing you guys did was the Roman period, and so I'm going to review ancient Kemet in terms of who we were, and then we'll go into what happens after the Roman period, who takes over. Now, this thing may not be on. This is your recorder. It's on. Oh, good. So, you know, Carter told us if a race has no history, if it has no worthwhile tradition, it becomes a negligible factor in the thought of the world, and it stands in danger of being exterminated. And that's kind of what's happening to us right now. You know, they shot another brother today, laying on the ground, hands up in the air, trying to help another brother who was autistic down in Florida. And he's laying there, hands up in the air, talking to the brother. The cops shoot him. And he asked him, he said, "Why did you shoot me?" He says, "I don't know." But he shot him because he was black. He didn't shoot the light-skinned brother who had the toy in his hand. Shot the brother with the hands up, laying on his back on the ground. That's some sick stuff, you know. But it's sicker than that. Because they're bringing, I just have to comment on this first because I've been dealing with this for the last couple of weeks. They're bringing all these brothers back from Iraq and the, what's the other one, Afghanistan. And you know, when you're in the military, I was in the military, you get first shot at civil service jobs. So the military combatants get first shot at police jobs, fireman jobs, and EMS jobs. But they're not vetting these people psychologically. So you're bringing these damaged young people back who, while they were overseas, and I served with them, most of them are cowards, no matter how well trained they are. They spend all their time over there cowering, then they come back over here and want to be Rambo. And we're the Rambo victims, you know? So, you know, some of this, that young fellow down in Texas, actually, I just happened to meet him. I hope it was a spiritual thing. A spirit jumped from me and jumped to him. He was a combatant. But me and Professor Griffiths together, and he came to our table. Now, you hate to see anybody die. But maybe other people dying and going to funerals and standing over a coffin, they'll kind of get to feel how we're feeling every day. And it shouldn't take that, but if that's what it takes, that's what it takes, you know? So let's back to what Carter says. He said, if a race has no history, if it has no worthwhile tradition, it becomes a negligible factor in the thought of the world, and it stands in danger of being exterminated. So I hope, and I heard that you guys have been coming to this lecture, it's a fantastic lecture series. Sorry I hadn't been able to be here, but don't just come and listen to people like us. I hope you all are taking our stuff and taking it and putting it back to work in the street and in organizations, and everybody in here should belong to some organization or another working for the freedom of black people. If you're not, join one tomorrow, because that's the only way things are going to change. Everybody in this room is going to die. From the looks of it, most of us have at best 45 years. Most of us got a lot less. You know, I just found out my PSA is rocking at 47. That's not good. You know what I'm saying? That could reduce a brother's time down here. So we know we're not here very long. So the stuff we do is for the next generation. So stop wasting time. Build tomorrow with this knowledge that you're getting, because that's what this is all about. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time, and everybody else that comes there wasting their time. This is a freedom fight. If you want to carry a gun, we'll hand you the gun. But if you're not the kind to carry a gun, then carry your mind and change the world. Because if you don't, your grandchildren are going to suffer the same mess we're suffering today. And there's no way around it. Either you're fighting for freedom or you're suffering from tyranny. Next slide. I just threw this up there because what I was talking about when I first started this piece, I was talking about Pan-Africanism, and everything I do kind of centers on Pan-Africanism, because Pan-Africanism is about us uniting the Caribbean, Central South America, Latin America, and the continent of Africa, the United States and Canada, the brothers and sisters in the Indian Ocean and in the Pacific. And if we don't get busy about bringing together the nearly 2 million Africans in the world, 9% of this world, this predatory white 9%, will keep dominating our lives. We've got 9% of the world dominating the life of all of the rest of the world because we're so busy having fun on one level or another that we can't use basic common sense that life is about food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security, and you can't get that unless you control economic, politics, culture. It's that simple. All this other stuff about history is nice. picking at these dates and talking about the glorious things. That's only supposed to fortify you so that you can get busy into providing the food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for your community, for your family, for yourself, and controlling the places we live by controlling economic, politics, culture. That's what this is about. That's the only thing it's always been about. That's what it's about now. Everything else is to assist that process. Next slide. Next slide. I wanted to run through, because many of us who have been to Africa, we know we have glorious capitals and cities and metropolis, but most of us don't. So just slowly go through them. Okay. That's the African Union headquarters in Addis in Ethiopia. That's Nairobi, Kenya, its capital. Accra, Ghana. Dakar, Senegal. Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Pretoria, South Africa. Cairo, Egypt, Brazzaville, Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, Kinshasa, Lagos, Nigeria, and Yoruba land, and then our great Mount Kilimanjaro, where you can go skiing in the morning and picnic in the afternoon on the same mountain in Africa. And brothers and sisters in Africa, they go skiing. But we don't see that. We see them begging with a cup in their hand on American TV, you know. This is the great Lake Nyanza, out of which the Nile begins way in the south. It don't begin in the mountain of Ethiopia. That's only one of its sources. It don't begin in Uganda. That's another one of its sources. This is where it begins in Lake Nyanza, that picks up water from most of the rivers in the Congo and the rivers coming out of Malawi and a few other places. This is again that beautiful lake. This is the lake they call Victoria, but we call it what it is, Nyanza. This is the Mountain of the Moon in Uganda. Again, we have mountains with snow in the middle of Africa. Brothers and sisters do all the kind of there's a lot of recreational facilities and hotels around the base of this mountain. And this is where the White Nile comes from. Go to the next one. And the Nile River in Uganda, you know, in East Africa, that's called the White Nile. Keep going. And that's the beautiful Nile going past our pyramids. I know sometimes they get us so crazy, even though we into Kemet, we still think somebody else did it. But no, our ancestors did that with their minds. Keep going. This is the Isfit Falls in Ethiopia. A bunch of small tributaries during the raining season makes up this gigantic fall. The water just comes from everywhere, and this fall creates the Blue Nile. Keep going. Again, looking at the Nile as it's flowing through Khartoum and Sudan, this amazing river running through the middle of a desert. Go ahead, brother. This is Lake Nitron, the Great Rift Valley in Kenya, East Africa. I wanted us just to see that Africa looks more than what we tend to think it looks like. Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe, the most fantastic waterfall in the entire world. Go ahead. This is Livingston Fall. I hate Livingston. They need to get rid of that Livingston name, but I think they're working on it. And this is in the Congo. Brother Beanie and some of the people from Birmingham, England, just returned from Congo a few days ago. I was supposed to be on that mission, but couldn't go, where the traditional leaders have started a movement to destroy the religions of the book. So they've been having the religions of the book. So they've been burning the Bibles and burning the Quran and burning any other book that didn't come out of their ancestors. And they've been locating the shrines of our ancestors and began to reestablish indigenous religion as the primary intellectual points of view in the Congo and also in Angola. Again, the plains of Africa, most of Africa looks like this. Most of Africa is plains, not rainforests, even though we have extraordinary rainforests. Keep going. Again, the plains of Africa. This is the rainforest, which they call the jungle. Keep going. Again, the rainforest, looking at the faunas from the bottom of the rainforest. This is very significant to world ecology, but they make us think this is how all of Africa looks, and we have to kind of eke out a living out of this, and that's an insanity. Keep going. Keep going. I put this up, go back. Because when you look at all of this stuff, when you talk about the religion of the world, they don't have anything up there that make us think, there's an African religion in the world. But if you look closer, almost all of this stuff is Africa. The first time you'll see a cross is on the temples of Kemet. thousands of years before Christ, you know. The first time you'll see the star, the 7-point and the 8-point, again, is ancient Kemet. Buddha, of course, we know is black, and in all the major temples in Japan and the rest of Asia, the inner sanctum always have a black Buddha as their sacred space. We know the star and crescent. You see this in Kemet long before. You'll also see this on the shield of Hannibal when he's fighting the Romans. There is no Islam yet when that's displayed. And of course, what they call the menorah, you find this on the temples of Egypt long before there's anybody called the Haribu or the Hebrews. And the star they call, that's the star of Judaism or David, it's called the dog star in ancient Egypt. And it's a reference to Sirius, the star Sirius. Oh, go to the next. Egyptians were black, and they had the world's first known writing system. And what I'm going to do in this next piece, just to show you, there's our cross. There's no Christianity yet by thousands of years. And you see many crosses throughout Egypt of their spiritual system. All of the religions we know in the West, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, all of them are fragments from the periphery, not even core stuff. They're fragments from the periphery of the system you are afraid of that's called voodoo in some place, or traditional African understanding of the rest of the nature and the cosmology we're a part of. Next. The pyramid text, which is the oldest written religious document in the world. In this text, you find all of the fundamentals that we find in the Western religions. You'll find God creating the world. You'll find God creating man and woman. You'll find God creating the Word. You'll find God creating humans out of the Word. It says, I hika. Hika means I vibrate, and out of that vibration, I create everything else. And it tells you how God created. And then what's so cool about the African God? This is Amun, who's doing all this creation. When Amun has created everything, it says, having created all that my heart desired, I then expanded in them. Meaning that whatever is life is nothing more than an aspect of my essence having that experience. And then at the end of that dialogue in the pyramid text, he goes, it's almost like an afterthought, but to get you straight. And he says, I, who created myself out of myself, came from my mother, Nu. Meaning the first phenomenon anybody referenced that's called divinity is feminine. Don't get it twisted. I'm not talking about LGBT stuff here. I'm talking feminine. The feminine created out of itself without a masculinity. And then masculinity joined when Amun found itself to be. The first thing Amun saw was that Ma'at, the feminine, was at his side. And so it's referenced that Amun and Ma'at is brothers and sisters. But the West like to say Africans were marrying their brothers and sisters. We never engaged in, what's that called? Incest. And our disease, lack of having diseases that come from incest proves that we didn't engage in incest. Sister and brother was the only way a male and female saw a relationship. You weren't friends. You weren't cousins. You were sisters and brothers. And that still holds in almost every language in Africa. For a man to refer to a woman that's not old enough to be his mother, but is not his auntie, she can only be his sister. Okay, you understand? That's the way the language explains it. But the language is how your thoughts constructed. So this text that's chiseled on this wall, almost anything you can find in, especially the Genesis stories. And remember, the Quran, the Torah, and the Bible use the same Genesis story. It's the same religion, 3 expressions of the same religion. All this foolishness about different religion is foolishness. And anybody who really know me, I was an imam for 18 years. I went to Mecca 1974, 75. When Malcolm X got killed, I'm the guy that took over. 21 years old, I became the imam of the Muslim mosque. And I walked away from Islam because it wasn't our thing. It was a variation on an aspect of our thing. Okay, go to the next. Because this is the tree. In the beginning, none In physics, this may be referred to as liquid matter. And then atum, which is that hidden thing we don't know, but the thing that caused everything else to come into being. Atum ray is the energy. And atum ray produces shu and tefnu, air and moisture. And the air and moisture produce the earth and nut, which represents the things we call the heavenly bodies. And these two phenomena comes as this is the feminine, this is the masculine, this is the feminine, this is the masculine. And these two come together and produce Nephthys and Isis, or Set, who are the two female figure, and then Asar and Set, his brother. So in everything African, in order for life to continue, it is a feminine and it is a masculine. They didn't have any confusion, and they left us this charge. You know, the rest are things that emanate. Most of these names are qualities and attributes that should be and could be developed in the character of any human being. They're not gods sitting out there. They're all sitting in every one of you. Nun, the principle, is in you. Atum, the principle, is in you. Ra, the principle, is in you. Heru, the principle, is in you. Everything that you see, those principles are in you. And when you go to Islam, they call them the 99 pearls of faith. 99 pearls of faith ain't nothing more than the Abusun and the Orishas and the low ones. Don't let nobody play with your head. Study and learn. They're qualities and attributes that anybody should be able, if you have the correct body of knowledge, to develop in your character to make you a stronger, better human being in organizing the world you're in so that it can protect your offsprings and the offsprings of your kind. If that's not what you're thinking about, then you're in the wrong boat called life. Because life is about the continuation, and you must create protection for that continuation. Per M. Haru, the book of Becoming Forth by Day, I just want to show you a picture. Older than any textbook, religious book the West have. And you see those two lines in the middle? I'm also a Prince Hall Mason, Cornerstone Lodge 37, and the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the State of New York. Very proud to be a Prince Hall Mason, because we have the wrong idea of what Masonry is. It came out of Kemet. Prince Hall and those others, when they got it back from the white folks, they used it to help free us. When the white folks left to go back to England, they said, okay, you guys in the lodge, let us come and go. They said, no, we can't go. Our brothers and sisters are in slavery. As long as one of them are in slavery, we're in slavery. And they did not leave this country when they could have gone. They stayed here and fought. And they fought in the American Revolution. Every one of those brothers that was the original Free African Lodge, which is now called the Prince Hall Grand Lodge. And those two lions represent, one is looking into yesterday, one's looking in the future, and Ra in the middle represents today. That's the fundamental symbol of Freemasonry. Go to the next. And of course we know this one very well. This is the American legal system. You got 12 jurors sitting up there. You've got a man who's being judged for his deeds. You got his heart being weighed on the scale of justice, which is symbolized by a woman, just like the one they use downtown Manhattan. But they don't tell you they took your stuff. You got somebody who's trying to make sure everything weighs out. In this one, we don't have the little app. Oh, there he is. That's like the district attorney. Now, if your stuff is a mess, he's going to handle it, and you're going to have a right his eye. But if everything is cool, you get the court recorder is going to say, well, he can go to the bailiff, then you can go and get out of jail. And this 12 people and the law which they use it. So in one papyrus, they create their whole legal system out of your stuff and don't even mention it to you. Go to the next. This is not what my lecture really about. I just thought we'd pass through this because it's important, because we came from somewhere to this place. The coffin text, which is another very old religious book, and you see how the priest is dressed. That is the traditional dress of priests in West Africa and other places, even today, wearing the leopard skin at the highest level. Now, a priest is not a preacher. A priest is a scientist. He's either a physician, a dentist, a psychiatrist, musician. He's a scholar and a specialist in one area of life or another. There's no word for priest in our language. That's a Western attachment. These are scientists, the people that understand how our world works and how we should work in order to be in harmony with that world. The This is another one of our great books called the Cotton Text. We'll go to the next one. Next one, the Book of Gates, another one. These are all holy books that we had before there was a Torah, Quran, Bible, any of those things. And they know this. And they got these stuff in their libraries of their museum, and they're pretending like they found us in the trees someplace trying to figure shit out. And we need to go back to like, okay, let's not play games mentally with the West anymore. Let's get our stuff together by teaching this stuff in our living rooms to our children and our grandchildren. You don't need a school. Yes, children have to go to school. There's a lot of good things they can learn, but we know a lot of things they're not getting in the school. So teach it in your home. Teach it in the living room. If you're lucky enough to have a church that will open the doors, give us some others who understand what you do, and use that church in those days when you're not having service, and teach the history and the culture of your people to your children. And I guarantee you, when they go out in this world, no matter how much extraction, pull them away from your teaching, what you give them will always save them and pull them back. I've experienced it with mine. I had a couple that want to be the biggest gangsters in New York. One of the gangsters is the principal now, very good school out in Brownsville, and the other one is working in a hospital as an administrator. He was one that really wanted to be a gangster. That boy was, he was like, but a few little dad here and there and stuff, moving best friends, woke him up. But we had given him the path back when he fell off the trail because he knew his history, he knew his culture. Another one of the Book of Gates. Keep going. Oh, go back one. There's our beloved cross. Here again, there is no Christianity yet. You know, and that's one of the symbols that deals with the aspect of divinity that's in our culture. Keep going. Keep going. I quickly say this to show that we had white paint, yellow paint, black paint. We chose to paint the face black, the hat, crown yellow, and the feathers white. So if the Egyptians were white, they would have painted themselves that way. And there was some bad chemists, because this paint has lasted for thousands of years. It's still there. Next one. And this is again a statue of Amun. We're just going to keep flipping. I just wanted you to see that all of the images and symbols we use for ourselves were of black images. Just keep walking. We saw ourselves as Africans. We saw ourselves as black. Stop. Because she messes up the whole world. If they got this all wrong. The first Madonna child, worship along the Nile, said the Holy Mother and Heru the child, one of the Immaculate Conception, the God of Seven. But there was never anybody named Messiah. Don't drop one myth to get caught up in another myth and trip yourself up. There was never anybody named Heru. Heru and Asar is what's possible for everybody in the world. Every woman is a Set. Every man is Osar. Every child, male or female, that emanates from them is Heru. Do you understand that? You're talking about the forces of nature, the forces of the universe. See this lady sitting out here looking at me thinking, isn't he going crazy? This lady is the sum total of everything that has ever existed since existence came into existing on the line that arrived at her. Everything anybody we ever called God ever knew is in your mind. The key is having the keys to get it out. You know, the word education comes from educate, me to bring something inside out. What they do in school is not education. That's a tooling process. Why? The tools are supposed to give you the things necessary to bring what's inside of you outside. But they do it just the opposite. They tell you they're trying to put something inside of you. And so what they end up doing is lock up what's inside of you, and you can't get it outside of you. It leads to frustration and all the other stuff. Okay. That's why you'll find that if you go to Kemet, you'll find what we call the 7 liberal arts, which brothers deal with in Stolen Legacy. We were already teaching the 7 liberal arts. Those are the tools that we need. Now they're teaching it in all the universities in America. They just don't tell you that the 7 liberal arts comes from you. The 7 liberal arts are the tools that our ancestors devised to bring what's inside of us outside of us. When you saw those musicians, they were taking something that was inside of them and presenting it outside for you. See? And if they do it right, their rhythm will find a relationship with your rhythm and you move with them. That's the ma'at piece. That's the harmony and the balance piece.
So once you get into our culture and know what the culture is really about, it's about the one thing, the only thing that exists is divinity. We are all nothing more than an expression of the aspect of that divine essence, having our peculiar experiences. Nothing more. When you're clear on that, it's easy to say I'm God having a human experience and not feel anything, because that's the only truth that exists. Go to the next. And of course, Assad, in one of the oldest statues of him, just black features as he can be. Okay? There ain't no Jesus yet. Yet this is the first risen Savior being worshipped on the now in Abydos. Go to the next. And this I love. It's the 12 divine disciples of God on earth, or the original 12 disciples known as the Neteru. If you look at the names of the 12, study what the quality and the attributes are, you will be surprised. If you take the English name of the Christian 12, translate it into the esoteric meaning, you will have the exact same quality and attributes that they're talking about. And then you can juxtapose those besides 12 of the 99 pearls of faith of Islam, and you'll come up with the same 12. The quality and attributes that can be built in the character of any human being. If you're in your own culture, following your own rituals, doing your own rites and passages, then you will derive at a place in your mind that will allow you to become a creator. Because you create through thoughts. And what you create is concepts, ideas, and principles that your hands can bring into existence. Next. I just want you to show you how black they are. Next. And we know this comes out of the book, Second Day of Civilization and Barbarism. He says, this is the Egyptian. This is what he called the Indo-European, the people we call Asiatic today. This is the rest of the Africans, and these are the white folks who he called the Semite. Now, he didn't paint this. This is on the walls of a tomb in Kemet. This is how they saw themselves. And white folks had this picture in their museum for centuries. And never told you they had this photo until Shakata did pull it out. Go to the next. These are brothers and sisters from the land of Yam. That's the place we now call Sudan. And they're coming up to their king. And see, like people like to play around the little game and says, oh, we got light skin hanging out of our back. White folks know. We were every shade of brown before we left Africa. And every shade of beige before we left Africa. Before we even met the white man. We created the white man. He's just void of melanin. Because he had a crisis. You know? Go to the next one. Abydos, the oldest city of Upper Egypt, 5,000 years old to 3,100 BC. I put Abydos there because when Abydos was built, this is where you went to worship the first risen Savior. What's extraordinary about Abydos? These are pillared temples. Look at those beautiful pillars. There ain't no Greece yet. There ain't no Rome yet. There's no Dorian or Ionian or any of that stuff yet. All right? So when you go into the Masonic temple, you walk between those two pillars, we go like ask them to tell you these things about the Greek or Roman, then you say, oh no, I could go to Abydos 5,000 years before Greece, and we already had this magnificent temple. Look at the strength of that thing. That's about 7,000 years old, and it's still there. Go to the next one. This is the Grand Temple, or the Grand Lodge of Waset. But it's really a university complex. What's so fantastic, and I don't have a picture of it, but the kid was even wearing a backpack going to school. Do you know we invented the backpack? That's a deep story. No, the backpack. In the tomb of King Tut, they had the tweezer. You know how significant the technology is to produce a tweezer? That's deep. Go to the next. This is another look at the Great Temple. And the Arab Muslim brothers said, well, with all of this is Haran. But they built one of the best and most significant mosques in Egypt on top of a temple they said is Haran. And that's deep. They need to explain that to me. I tried to get them to explain it in the town that was in Egypt. They couldn't do it. I'm going to be there on Sunday. I'm going to try to get them to explain that to me again. I know they're not going to be able to do that. Go to the next one. Pharaoh Hatshepsut burial temple. What's so extraordinary about this is those beautiful pillows are all carved out of the face of that mountain. They can't do that today and create such a phenomenon. Go to the next one. Wuhan Fortress, Aswan, Egypt, 1,000 So we don't copy this from Britain. Who does Britain copy it from? Us. Go to the next one. You know who copies this one. You know, the replica of the Tenement in Washington, D.C. called the Washington Masonic Monument. Go to the next one. And there it is again with, I think this is the Jefferson Memorial. Now, go to the next one. That's Lincoln? Okay. But here's where they copied that from. The reflecting lake in Luxor, the great temples, except we had multiple techniques. Go to the next one. Another shot of that. Go to the next one. And since some people even confuse and talk about the ancient Iranians being black, well, this is what the ancient Iranians tell the world they look like. So those people in Iran today are not Iranians. Those are Turks on the Caucasus Mountains who conquered the land of Iran, or the land of Persia. But when they were known as Persians, this is what they looked like. And this is in the Pergamon Museum. They just took out the whole down wall and took it to Germany. And don't tell us that they found a bunch of black folks running around in ancient Persia. And this is who Persians look like. And if anybody knows what the traditions in Ghana, there's the umbrella, which is all over Africa. But look at the hair, it's beads, it's not straight, it's not cylindrical. That tells you that that's an African collar. Go to the next one. Oh, my senior brother, Anthony, I know, sir. He got me by a day or a year, honestly. He was the boss. Good to see you, sir. Go to the next. Oh, good. This I thought was fantastic. And this really isn't part of the lecture, but it's so nice. I hate to just put it out. I just wanted you to see the visual. But when you look at this, in line one,
I'm in a lecture series.
He's talking about a temple and of the set of the god set. And then he said net Anu of the cities of the Anu people. And then he's Terraneta, he's talking about the gods of that city. This is one of the oldest piece we've got, not the oldest, that's dealing with the fact that we are talking about these qualities and attributes we call it gods of natures. And the Europeans know this. Everything he got, he copied it from our stuff. Yes, he did. He built the whole artificial world on our stuff. And then by keeping us blind, making us so afraid to die, that we won't even try to question the poison that he's calling our reality. Go to the next one. Scorpion King. I like this one because I got a big old scorpion right there. It's my birthmark, so I guess I must be cousin to the Scorpion King. But my family comes from the Uganda area, and being of the Tutsi people, my assumption is we came down from Kemet many centuries ago. And I missed my great-grandfather only by about 3 years. He lived to be 107 and died just before I was born. But he was one of the last enslaved Africans sold into the Georgetown, South Carolina rice market. So, go to the next one. Ancient Egyptians have pre-written script. Go to the next one. And let's look at the hieroglyph. We've got the teacher, the boss, in here. Again, that cross is so prominent there. There's no Christianity yet. Go to the next one. This is the Heretic script. Go to the next one. And this is the Egyptian number. This is the Mali script, which is in the Sudan. No, this is still in Kemet. Go to the next one. This is the King Nama. But Nama can't possibly be the first dynasty because if you've got Abydos with all of that stuff already built, somebody's in charge. So I guess he represents that time when things in Egypt got united under one leadership. Go to the next one. And just keep walking through these. I just wanted to show from the first to the 30th dynasty, all of our leaders were Africans. And you can look at their sculpture and see these were Africans that sculpted themselves as Africans. And despite the breaking off of the nose and the lips, you still couldn't hide that they were Africans. Okay. This is so profound. Even the white man had to draw it as an African because he knew that's what it was. This one was done by Napoleon and his people. So they knew. So they go back home and lie. Go to the next one. The next one. I just wanted to see that these leaders are all African. And they had white paint and they had red paint. They painted their skins black. You can see these are African rulers for all of those centuries over ancient Kemet. Look at it. I mean, this is just mind-boggling. We just some bad folks that have lost our minds. Gain your memory and you get your mind back. Your memory comes from learning your history. Your history is your memory. Keep going. I just want you to walk through them so that we can see. And Queen T was a little cute too. Back in the day, I'd be rapping. Now, go back to Shawshank. In the Bible, they talk about this one pharaoh in the book of Kings, and this is the brother they're talking about. And you can see he's straight in African. That's the statue he had done when he was alive. Go to the next one. Now, this young fella here, this is the Harka. They call him by name in the same literature they call their Bible. But they don't tell you he's an African man. They refer to him as king of Egypt and king of all the world. Go to the next one. In their Deuteronomy, it says, be careful. Only be careful and watch yourself closely so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen or let them fade from your heart as long as you live. Teach them to your children and to their children after them. And so they're telling you, teach your history to your family. Teach your history to your generations. Now they're putting this in the literature that they're using, and then they'll go to war with us when we says, let's teach our history in the school to our children. So 2 young black men in Baton Rouge and in Dallas, Texas, killed some white policemen and one little brother out there, and they're having a fit. But we didn't raise them. They got raised in white school by white values and white academicians, went into the white military, learned the white killing tools, was indoctrinated by white folks on how and why to kill, and then they came back and an African rose up and said, this shit is all wrong, and flipped on them. Then they want to blame it on us. You created those kids. So take responsibility. Because there's a lot more where they came from. Because you created it. Go to the next one. Of course, I love this statue that someone did. This is very contemporary. This is not old. But I just thought it just so depicted the symbol of my aunt. Go to the next one. And I already walked you through that piece. Go to the next one. And of course, the 42 principles of Mahal, out of which 10 were extracted. And if you do the 140 plus, you'll find the 99 pearls of faith that's in the Islam system. They have it as singular names, but when you look at the meaning of those names, they come right down to the quality and attributes that's represented there. Go to the next one. So much for Moses or Abraham and the circumcision thing. We were doing that before he came, and they even write in their own Bible that he comes into Canaan and the Canaanites circumcise him, said that he was unclean. So now they want to make us believe de facto that that's a part of a tradition that was created by some white folks called Jews. Of course, that was something that we created. And I don't think it was that much of rituals as much as it was the cleanliness. There's diseases you can get if you can't clean off your penis. So if you move some of that out of skin so you can wash yourself, you don't get those diseases and end up in that critical situation. The Canaanite, the land they call Palestine, and others are trying to call Israel today, this is how the people that lived there back then looked. Go to the next one. And there's some controversy about this, but I'll fight that these are Hebrew exiles, the people who were called Hebrew. That's a very controversial piece. And I know one of y'all saw one of my little brothers brought me to come and listen to him and then try to beat up on me. And I could have beaten up on him because if you want to take the responsibility of being the Hebrew Israelite, then you got to take the responsibility of all the genocide that leads to your getting to Jerusalem. Because you kill whole civilizations on your way. Alright? It's in your book. It tells you how they slaughtered the Moabites and started business, kill all the women, kill the chickens, kill the dogs. And one general didn't want to kill anybody, so he brought the woman in. And Moses said, I want you to kill everybody. So then Moses made a compromise, said, kill all the women that slept with men, you keep the virgins for yourself. That's their literature. You want to talk about that? You know, that beats the Star David in the conversation. Go to the next one. This is another piece about ancient Hebrews being taken into captivity in the Syrians. Just look at the different hair types of hairstyling. One had the little beaded hair and one had the cylindrical hair. These are the Assyrians in the back. These are supposed to be the Hebrew in front. But even if you look at the Hebrew question, it's like really quick. During that period that they're talking about, that is the same period that the Hyksos has invaded northern Africa. And as we know what occurs under these invasions, even though they were there for maybe 300 years, when you invade, you don't usually have too many of your people coming and replenishing you. So you're raping and molesting and misusing the population as you're there. After a generation, a different kind of relationships will take place. But the one thing's going to happen, that white or brown population that came in is going to get darker and black. But what don't change is the value system, the belief system. And I think when we came out of the South to take our land back, those brothers and sisters that had bought into that system and didn't want to buy back into their original system, they had to leave town. And if you just look at the history of the Hebrew, it was a military formation because everything that happens in their oratory about that Exodus is about military behavior. And they went to war with city after city after city until they got to the place they call Jerusalem, which was named Jerusalem before they got there. I just want to show an Ethiopian sister, Ethiopian Hebrew, who do not call themselves, what's that word people use? Palash. That's like calling somebody by the N-word. Right? So they call themselves Beni Israel, and we're from the house of Israel. Okay, go ahead. That was the first temple of Solomon, which is a replica. Nobody knew what the temple looked like, but when I was doing this piece for the Masonic Lodge, I wanted to put those two pillars in the front so they could tell me about this Jacket and this other pillow, you know. And I'm not going to give you all the Masonic secrets either, but we had the pillar temple long before there was an Ionic or Doric thing. So go to the next one. And just look through the rest fast. So this was one painting you find in the book about Queen Makeda. Go to the next one. This is a temple in Ethiopia that they said is the Queen of Sheba's palace. It may or may not be, but this is what is being represented in Egypt in the archaeology as being her temple and palace. We're going to go visit that next summer. Go to the next one. The city of Aksum. And the place we call Ethiopia today was not ancient Ethiopia. It was the Aksumite kingdom back then. But they took the name Ethiopia, just like Ghana of today was not ancient Ghana. They took that name when they got their independence. And this, go to the next one. In this building, they said they had the Ark of the Covenant, which was supposed to have been brought to Ethiopia in their mythology by the son of the queen of Ethiopia and the King Solomon. But why would a queen, like Dr. Ben would say, with all of this extraordinary wealth and all of this power, go and have sex with someone with a desert rat? And so he had wisdom. What kind of wisdom could he have possibly had to have created what he created up there, which was nothing? The only thing they claimed to have created is a temple which nobody have ever seen. They only draw replicas of. Go to the next one. So we look at the first vision of a mother and a child. Then we look at a later version, and you find many of these in Ethiopia, and then we look at long after what's going on today. Go to the next. The history of Christianity in ancient Africa, just looking at St. Catherine Monastery, 335 AD. Go to the next one. So what you said, Brown, to me was y'all had covered the Greek period and the Roman period. You wanted to see what followed the Roman period. So I'm going to kind of go into what followed the Roman period. What followed the Roman period is the Islamic period. So me and you be learning that stuff. So it can be good and bad up in there. Because, you know, as Wesley, Muhammad was a beautiful brother who needed to spend more time hanging with us, come out of the cocoon, but he does some really research on that part of the world. And he's got it fairly right. If you listen to this tight stuff, he said the Prophet and the others studied Kemet and was really trying to replicate Kemet philosophically and theologically in what became known as Islam. So he got that part right. And the people we call them Arabs today is not the indigenous black people of that peninsula who were black people. And many of them are still living there. He got that right, but then he tries to defend the white Arabs' behavior as though these were black folks, enslaving other black folks, and then he gets that wrong. But we won't bump head over that. I put this one in there because this is Christ and his disciple. This is a painted wooden panel in the Coptic Museum in Cairo. Now when this is done, Michelangelo ain't painted nothing yet. He's like centuries away. So if they got this stuff, why they throwing the white Jesus at you? All right? Go to the next one. And this is Jesus hanging out with his grandma in that same Coptic museum. So you got all this black stuff that the ancient Africans painted of the symbol they chose. Now, I don't believe anybody named Jesus ever lived. I believe there's a lot of brothers and sisters that represent that bundle of quality and attributes that allow for that spiritual phenomenon to grow in the community and to find tyranny. But when you do your metaphor to teach a lesson to the next generation, you need an image. And all of the images they had back then was about black folks, love of black folks, and liberate the black folks. Go to the next one. That's in Egypt and the museum in Cairo. The Coptic Museum. I just wanted to show just the beauty of Ethiopian Christians. Every time I look at the scene, look at the vibrancy in those kids' face. Now while they're doing this, there ain't no Catholic church yet. And so if there ain't no Catholic church, there's no Protestant church yet. There's only the Byzantine church, which they call the Eastern Orthodox Church, and black folks have instigated that, because that's coming right out of Kemet. After the Romans come in, what is called the Byzantine Empire is simply the latter period of the Roman Empire. Right? St. Mary of Zion Church is the oldest church in Ethiopia, and one of the 10 oldest churches in the world. When St. Mary of Zion is built, there is no Vatican, there is no Pope, none of that stuff exists yet. And yet this church is still there, but they don't allow any sisters up in there. So y'all go to Ethiopia, all you want is about small talk, we about Mary of Zion, and we want to see it. And they're going to tell you can't go in it, because they'll tell you Christianity is not an indigenous religion to Ethiopia. And so when the brothers who adopted this from the Byzantines and from the Copts, the indigenous Queen Mother burnt all the churches down. And this was the one that only got partially burnt. So since the sisters burnt all the churches down, they barred sisters from going in the church. So you can't go up in there. What was extraordinary, when I went in the church, there was a priest that came up to me, and I was with a white boy, because we were on one of these fam tours. And so it was only 2 males, everybody else was women. So they said we could go on, but the women couldn't go. You know, the women had a fit about that, because they couldn't go in the church. So the white boy had a camera. I left my camera in the hotel. When we got in there, the brother calls me. He says, "I know why you're here." I go, "What do you do?" I thought he wanted my money, so I reached in my pocket. I took the $20 bill, wrapped it around my finger, closed it in my hand. And I walked up to the brother and I handed him the money. He looked at me like I was some chicken down on me. He wouldn't take the money. I was like, he just made a little gesture, you know. Come here. There was a tapestry as big as that window down to the floor, about as wide. And he went and took the tapestry and started spinning it. What's wrong with this dude? And he spins the tapestry around to expose a painting of their Virgin Mary and Child. Thousands of years before Michelangelo's. And she black as the ace of spades. And she's wearing blue with gold trim. And Christ is in her arms. And white with gold trim, and he black as the ace of spades. He didn't say nothing. So I said, like, just give me some of the pictures. I'll pay you for the pictures, you know. You think I heard from that back there? He went over and picked up pictures with him. But it was the most magnificent painting that was painted centuries before the Michelangelo first painting. I put this the 5th century Byzantine church foundation in Ethiopia. What time is it, son? 15 Okay. At the 5th century, there's still no Catholic church, but you got this church in Ethiopia. Go to the next one. And Deborah ran Selassie's church in Gandour, Ethiopia. And what they do from the ceiling, from the floor to the ceilings, all through the church, they painted the verses from the Bible is painted. This is their hieroglyph. So they painted the whole Bible, and every one of the churches you go in, the Bible is painted. Every verse, every chapter is painted in pictures in each of the churches. Go ahead. This is one of the rock-hewn churches up in Ethiopia. They started building the churches up in this area, and I'll tell you why. So go to the next one. And this is the Grand Church St. George at Lalibela. And there's 11 or 12 of those churches they built down in the ground. Go to the next shot. So this is what it looks like from the air. And the way you get down there, you walk through this cut in the rock, and you go down, and you come out right here. And when you walk inside, it's an extraordinary cathedral. Because the sisters who burned down the other churches in the country, he goes up in the mountains, and he builds these churches down in the ground so nobody can see them. And even today, there's only one way up into Lalibela, just narrow little road. And if you go on Saturday, the chickens and the goats and everything is going to market, so it's going to take you about an hour to get a distance you would have gotten in, 10 minutes. Go to the next one. Another one of those churches they hewn out of the rocks. And this is a 16th century castle in Ghana, Ethiopia. Another one of those. And I show these to show that the castle type we're seeing in Western Europe, they're not being built yet when we got all of this already as a part of our history. Go to the next. The people from the kingdom of Yam. Now, since you're here, you're going to be asking a question or two, right? Since Brother Introduces here. Where's this kingdom of Yam?
It's in West, it's where the Sahara Desert is. It's like where present day Mali, Chad.
And so these people are coming from the kingdom of Yam. They're going to pay tribute to the people that's living in Kemet. If we were to go backwards in time, there's a satellite from outer space. They take pictures trying to find where all the oil and the minerals are at. They also found the underground rivers. There's two rivers that run from the Atlantic Ocean, where Nigeria and Ghana is, all the way over to Lake Chad. Lake Chad back in that day was so big you could get in your boat in Lake Chad and row by tributary into the Nile. So we could go visit our people, like we go from South Carolina to New York in the old days. We used to go from what is now Nigeria to what is Boxer by boat. It may have taken you a few months, but you went to visit your cousins, everything, buy supplies that you need, took some stuff to trade, hang out with the family, and went back home. Now, much of the tributaries in the rivers are underground now. Brother Gaddafi tapped into one of the biggest underground rivers in the world. They call it an equifact now. That's what waters Libya. And he built an extraordinary pumping system to get that water from the old river and use the fresh water. This is the ancient kingdom of Kerma, which I was hoping to see this summer, but my money just didn't work. And this is 3000 BC. Just look at the out, even though the buildings are gone, for the most part, just look at the foundation outlay. There's no Rome yet. There's no Greece yet. There's no London. There's no France. There is no Germany. Those are still barbarians run around the woods, paint themselves blue, and kill one another. Go to the next one. Arches from the Magi Temple Wall, which is another one of those temples down in what we now call Sudan. Go to the next one. Abdullah Temple at Lagos, Sudan. Go to the next one. Old Dungala, which is one of the ancient Sudan. Sudan actually had more churches than Ethiopia, but the Muslims burned and destroyed so much of what was there. There's very little of that history left. Go to the next one. This is one of the remains of an 11th century church at Bangladesh, Sudan. Look at the size of that thing in the 11th century. There ain't no church in England yet. Of all the Methodists, what's that guy named who founded the Methodist Church? Wesley. Wesley ain't born yet. Go to the next. You can go to the next. I really don't want to deal with that right now. This only one chart I wanted to look at. Here's where they say the Christ character that they're dealing with dies in 33. Between 33 and 1054. It's 1054 when you get what is the Roman Catholic Church. 1,000 years after the so-called death of Christ. What was happening with the church in all this period? This is a period where you get in the Ethiopian church and the early Eastern Orthodox Church. Okay? And then you get the Catholic Church. And you get up here, it's the 1500s before you get the Protestant churches, which most of us belong to. So it almost had no relationship to the history. It's that far away from it. So go to the next one. The next one, those are just different charts, explain the same thing. The next one really gets into the complication of that stuff. Go to the next one. The Hagia Sophia, the first great church of Christianity, senior church of the Byzantine Empire, which is now, go to the next one. It became a mosque after the Turks took over what is Constantinople then, that became Istanbul. And those tall minarets weren't on the original complex. They were built on it after they took it. Now it's a museum. It's no longer even a mosque. Go to the next one. But this is my boy right here. Y'all know who that is, right? That's Constantine. Okay, go to the next one. Now these are some of the folks. This is an old piece that I found in one of those books of the people who are at that Nicene conference that starts this writing process. And you can clearly see that at least two of them are Africans. Now, when the Pope came to Cameroon in 2009, he said 7 out of the 10 originals were African. Now, he was trying to recruit some Africans to the Catholic Church, so he had to give up some too. He said 7 of the original 10 authors that started this process were Africans. Because the Africans at that time never thought it was going to turn into the genocide it was going to turn. They were trying to civilize the barbaric Romans who had taken over their country. Because the Romans used their army to create something completely different. Go to the next one. Now this is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This is the original shrine inside the church. This is the original church. This is the modern church built around the original church. This is built by Constantine's mom, but she didn't build it. She went down there on a pilgrimage and said she found the site of Christ's crucifixion. And her son, who was the emperor of the Rome, sent people to build a church. But that ain't the site of nothing. This shit is all made up. But yeah, everybody gonna make a pilgrimage to it every year. Go to the next one. Because it's Vatican Square, or Vatican Circle. And what's unique about that, they have this tekken there that they stole from Africa. That's supposed to be evil. Yet they got a ball on top of it with their Christ standing on top of it. It's one of the most unique symbols in Christianity. But it's on the top of this tekken that they stole from Luxor. Go to the next one. There's a closer look at the text of the tekken, and this is St. Peter's Basilica. Go to the next one. This is inside St. Peter's Basilica, one of the biggest stolen libraries in the history of the world. They stole libraries from everybody. And what they couldn't carry, they burned. That's how evil these demons were. Like, if you go, hold right there, and I'll come back to my boy Peter. There's a book called The Papal Bull. If you've never read it, you should get it. The Papal Bull is a Peruvian piece of literature. And when the Spanish practice got here, murdering the Peruvian people, they found them with this extraordinary educational system and this extraordinary library. They sealed their library and take it back to Vatican and burn what they couldn't carry. But this one book has survived on this side. It's called the Papal Bull. What's Papelb, either B or BHU. But even if you get close, the computer will correct it for you and tell you when to get it. In the Papal Bull, the woman, the little girl, is picking berries one day. Just listen to this story. She pricks her hand on a calabash bush, cut her hand. And while she was complaining, an angel from heaven come down and told her that she had just been impregnated by God and she's going to give birth to God's child. So the girl, she's confused, so she go home with the grandma. Grandma was concerned that she done went out there with some boys in the bush, got knocked up or something. And when grandma tried to punish her, God sends an angel to grandma and says, no, this child is going to present the Savior of the world. And so the child had twins. But the evil king learns about this and decides that he's going to hunt the girl down, find the kids, and kill them. Well, they put the children in a basket and do what? Put them in the stream, put them in the river. Does that story sound familiar? But the crackers found that when they got over here. Right? Guess what happened to the children? A royal family found them and raised the twins. And when they got a certain age, they said, we've got to go and do what? The work of our Father. Does that sound familiar? So they went through the world and they're conquering the different evils as they go through the world. Then they got to the last big evil. And God put them to a test. Says the one who will continue has to kill the other. Both of them decide, then I will kill them. So God merged them into one. Because they both were worthy. And it tells how they wipe out evil and save the world and stuff like that. But you got to read it. There's a lot more to it than what I just said. But it's an extraordinary book. And let me be very clear. When I talk about Native Americans, I'm not talking about the Asiatic Native Americans. Because that's a newcomer who got here and only showed up before the white man. The black American, the black indigenous people, many of whom are sitting in this room represented by that blood. I'm represented by that blood. Others represented by that blood. We were here when the Asiatic got here. We engaged in some very heavy warfare with them over the centuries before the white man got here. But that's another story for another time. I just thought the black statue of Peter in the Vatican was interesting. They bathe him and change his clothes every year. So go to the next one. And this is the black statue of St. Paul with his nappy hair, with the Pope praying to him in the Vatican. Go to the next one. And of course, this is the Black Christ in the Metropolitan Cathedral of Mexico City. Next one. Black Madonna in Barcelona, like Mexico City. Go to the next one. We can move really fast. This is Black Madonna in Rome, Italy, that they bring out every year. You can see her up here with the child. And they march through the streets. These are the practice now, who's slipping out ropes and shooting us down in the streets, but they're worshiping the black woman all over the white Christian world. Go to the next one. Now I said, how that happened? Because they worshiping the Black Madonna in Spain. And we in the Congo, and I got real confused. Go to the next one. This is Pope Francis when he takes over and he's relieving the other Pope of duty. And they're praying to the Black Madonna and Child in the basement of the Vatican. This is the Pope before the two of them. He's praying to the Black Madonna in the Vatican. Go to the next one. This Pope Benedict, he's in the crowd of the shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa in Poland. Go to the next one. And this is Pope John Paul II and Our Lady of Zion Banzi and the Nicholas Church in Kiev, Ukraine, the Black Madonna Child. Go to the next one. And when Francis came in, they said, look, we've been telling you all that other lie and all that stuff. Here's the real deal. Here's your Black Madonna and Child. You can't be Pope without having one. And so there's old Francis saying, dang, I've been living a lie all these years and I have to invent, work with the truth. So go to the next one. Again, then and now, ancient Egypt, Ethiopia, Europe. Go to the next one. Tony Bravo sent me this piece. It's an 18th century painting by a European depicting Mary, Jesus, and Joseph arriving in Egypt. That's them there, doing the Egyptian celebration of the Set Festival, the celebration of the birth of the Son of God, Haru, born of Immaculate Conception. That's them there. And what this picture symbolized to the European, and then they got the Egyptian as white folks, and then the black folks as their slaves. So this is when they're mentally taking over our minds. So they're replacing our symbols with their symbols. And they put it in painting. They weren't complaining about what they were doing, and they're still doing it. Go to the next one. Of course, at the same time, they got a saint named Maurice. Now check Maurice. You don't get no blacker than that. You know, this is in Germany. Go to the next one. Again, Maurice, and I forgot who this cardinal is. But he's coming to the black saint. It's time to tell him what's going to happen when he dies and go to heaven, because the saint's already gone. Go to the next one. This is where I was really supposed to stop the next one. I thought it would be funny before I started playing other stuff. So, this is the Roman Empire. And we always think empire is about people beating up on people. No, empire is about stealing. All right? It's about stealing stuff from other people. So they were coming to North Africa because they wanted the wheat, they wanted the marble, they wanted the gold, they wanted the salt, they wanted the limestone. We had olives, we had grapes. Again, you got gold and marble, ivory, wheat, barley. So that's what they want. The same thing they're going to Africa for now, the natural resources. So the Romans, with their army, managed to take over the entire Mediterranean basin. Go to the next one. And then they ran into trouble in 100 to 500 BC, and this is the invasion of the Roman Empire. Some real crazy crackers come down out of the Caucasus Mountain, known as the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths, and they go and invade all around. These Visigoths and the Vandals, they get into North Africa. Remember, the white folks, for the brothers who went to the Moorish thing, now y'all got to really deal with some history, because some stuff was going on up in North Africa long before Islam with white folks. All right? The Greeks was up in here. Those crackers didn't go home when the Romans kicked their butt. They stayed. Where they don't go home to, they ain't got nothing to go back to. Everything they got is in Africa. So the Romans come, then they get beat up by some cats called the Vandals. And then they get beat up by these dudes called the Visigoths. And so the Roman Empire begins to go into decline. Go to the next one. I think y'all have gotten up to the Roman Empire. Then we ran into this cat right here. Arabus of Conquest, 636, this is the time of Muhammad the Prophet, 656. You got the Byzantine lands, conquered in 656. The Byzantine Empire is the latter part of the Roman Empire, where this thing we know as Christianity becomes the state ideology, which really started out as a liberation struggle by those who had been conquered by the Romans. And so, and that liberation struggle took aspects of the Kemetic spiritual system and brought it together as a way of organizing themselves culturally to fight against this thing, but the Romans took it over. Just like the whites would take over what is called Judaism, which was simply started out as a resistance movement that became a religion. Islam started out as a resistance movement that became a religion. We're not going to go heavy into that. So you got in 638, Islam, which starts down in Mecca, is breaking out into other parts, into Persia, into the Byzantine Empire, and eventually under the Buddha al-As into Kemet. Go to the next. So, the Lombards and the cats will eventually become, we'll call the Italians, the Franks, or the French. So all these people are beginning to attack what's left of the Roman Empire. This green part here is the Arab conquest. But it isn't just the Arabs' conquest in that. There's all these black folks. When the Arab come, they don't have a big army. Now, the black folks have been under the Greeks, they've been under the Romans, and so they're looking for somebody to help them liberate themselves. So the Arabs come in, at this time, the Arabs are mostly black people. They're not white people. Even though you have some Byzantines or some, not Byzantines, what do you call it, the Hellenistic Greeks left over, but most of the Greek children have become black. They've been there all these centuries intermingling. They're not white anymore. But for the most part, they're black folks. And if you read the literature, most of the people who would come to North Africa from Saudi Arabia is coming from Yemen. And Yemen is the blackest part of that area at that time. So these people who will come, they'll be black folks, and they're joining up with the other black folks. We call them collectively the Moors. So while they control a certain part of the Islamic Empire, you got some white folks over here controlling another part. There's a group called the, Saddam Hussein belongs to. Y'all got to appreciate it. I'm very tired. I'm very exhausted. So they holding, I'm getting old too. But you've got the first empire, the Umayyads, who have been driven out by the 8th century by the Abbas. Oh, girl, you've been in that mosque too, huh? Come on, girl. But the Abbas has taken over. This is when Islam starts moving into whiteness. So they drive the caliphate, that is the Umayyads, to come hook up who are like some light-skinned brothers. And they hook up with the really black brothers and team up, and they take all of us, Spain and some of France, and they're controlling all of North Africa. And this is how Islam is working for much of its history, early history in Africa. But then something's going to walk out of the Caucasus Mountains that's going to change all of that. Go to the next one. Arab armies marching into Egypt. That's just drama stuff. Go to the next one. So this is Islam by what century we talking about? 717. Everything that you see green, this is Islam. This is the word Africa, for that the word Africa comes out. This is Tunisia. That's where the word comes from. The ethnic group that lived in Tunisia. That was their name. But they were black folks then. They were not these white people we're seeing running around Tunisia today. So, all of the green, this is what happens after the Roman Empire. The Romans are still in Africa in the late 6th century. A brother named, the Prophet Muhammad dies, and a brother named Abu Bakr takes over. He's an elder, but he doesn't live very long. And he passed away, and a brother named Uthman takes over. Now this Uthman is a cool cat, but he's married to the Prophet's daughter. And everybody said he shouldn't have been the one to take over. It should have been Ali, who's also married to one of the Prophet's daughter. But the difference is, Ali is the Prophet's blood cousin, and Uthman is the Prophet's adopted cousin, going back to that period when the grandparents were there. And so Ali hooks up with some other black folks, and they protect Uthman. Ali thought that Uthman's cousin, a brother named Muawiyah, who's commanding the Muslim army in Syria, and this is the big prize of that day, would come on his side. But instead, Muawiyah came in on the family side, and they took Ali out. And so now, and before Uthman took over, when Abu Bakr died, Umar took over. And then Umar was considered by some historians assassinated by Uthman. That was why Ali really got upset. Because he felt that the mercantilists had taken over that spiritual system. So the people who today that we call the Shia, some crazy folks in Islam, they're the ones that was protecting the family of the Prophet. The people we call the Sunnis today, who's supposed to be carrying out the tradition, they're the ones that murdered off the family of the Prophet. That's some deep stuff right there. When I found that shit out, I left this thing. That's not right. This can't be right here. So when we see this crisis going on today, it started all the way back there. Now there's a good book you need to get. It's called Al-Jahiz. Al-Jahiz. J-A-H. You know how to spell that? J-A-H-E-Z-Z. But get close, and you'll find it. Barnes & Noble have it. Get it online. Al-Jahiz by Al-Jahiz. It's 9 short, we would call them 9 long essays today. They called them short books back then. He's writing in the 8th century Iraq. And his number 2 book is called The Superiority of the White Race, of the Black Race over the White. Now imagine a black man writing a book in the 8th century, and the book is titled, I got in that brown backpack over there. Work my little green juice up out of there. Then I'm working with the juice up. Yes. So he's writing in the 8th century Iraq. His name is Jahiz. And shake it up before you open it. Okay. Just open the top and ready to go. And for someone to be writing then that there is a phenomenon that allows him to say the superiority of the black race over the white. And then he begins to talk about the things that's superior. He says, our voice, eyes, our skin. He just goes off, sound like Francis Wellesley. But he gets better. In one of the other books, he talks about the fact that the Prophet Muhammad was black. And all of the original people around him was black. And there's this sister who ran his nursing corps long before Florence Nightingale. In the Battle of Badr and the Battle of Uhud. So reading that literature can give you some very interesting things. I'm going to show you one picture as we go down the. Okay. Now I'm going to take one about 5 minutes to put this up.
No, you have questions and answers.
Maybe y'all can read stuff. We're talking about the Kaaba. Now I've been there and I kissed this little black stone. This is the Kaaba. They call it Beitul Allah, the house of God. So if you're in ancient Kemet, where we have the Ba and the Ka, the soul and the spirit, when they come together, they form the temple of the divine, the temple of God, the house of God. They have the same concept in Islam. Go to the next one. So the 3 primary ways of praying in Islam. Go to the next one. Look at those same 3 primary ways of praying in the Kemet. And just as we do wudu in Islam, as we prepare for prayer, we have a similar washing methodology in ancient Kemet. Go to the next one. So people borrow things from you. This is the 2nd holiest shrine of Islam, the Mosque of the Prophet in Medina. It's a magnificent place, but the wealth of Africa builds this. Go to the next one. Then you get the crazy crackers coming out of the mountains. They come from around the Caucasus Mountains. They call them Seljuk warriors, or the Seljuk Turks. This is 11th century. And tell them this, black people is running this land for the most part, especially in North Africa and Spain. This would be southeastern Russia, but this is the Caucasus Mountains. This is where the real crazy white people are. So you got something talking about this crazy. Huh? Today it's in Russia. That would be when southeastern. Yeah, southeastern Russia. Below Armenia and Kazakhstan and those areas. And so go ahead. And then they would be followed by, and I put a facsimile of how they painted themselves. So you can see these are white people who takes over Islam. Then the Mamluk Empire comes in the 13th century, and these are the areas they conquered, and they stayed until the 16th century. Go to the next one. Then you really get the real crazies, the Ottomans, who would take it from all of them and take most of North Africa, leaving only this area is in the hands of the Moors. And then we go further down to the Moors being pushed down to Mali, Senegal, Niger, and those areas. And then we end up being enslaved in North America. So you get the Ottomans, and they would be there until the First World War, and then they would get wiped out. And they would lose power to the British and the French and the Americans. And that's what precipitated the crisis you're seeing today in North Africa, in Syria, in Iraq, in Saudi Arabia. This is when they, at the First World War, when they drive out the Ottoman, they divided that land up, and each of the Europeans took a piece of it to exploit the natural resources. Go to the next one. And so this is kind of like, then they got crazy. After the Arabs take all of that, they set up their crusade. The first crusade, they were able to make it to back to Jerusalem. They were going to take the Holy Land back. The second crusade, 1147, 1149. And the third, the last, which is the fourth, was the Children Crusade. They got beaten so bad, they sent their children, but they never made it any far as Turkey. Half of them was killed, raped, or molested by the older ones. Go to the next one. And at the height of their thing, the maximum extent of the Crusade states was these period of the lands that they managed to take. These are the Roman Catholic part, and this is the part that those who call themselves who will become the Protestant states would take all the rest of this land. Go to the next one. And then a force was formed called the Knights Templars, and they were sent there to guard the white pilgrims when they come to Jerusalem. So they called the Knights of the Temple because the Knights Temple made their headquarters in the ruins of Solomon's Temple. Go to the next one. This is a replica of the castle they built for themselves in Jerusalem. Go to the next one. Now, when the Knights Templars got there, they got so wealthy, robbing, going down into Kemet, and getting all of the information and stuff, that the other wealthy crackers in Europe sent another group of white boys up they call the Knights Hospitales. And they're supposed to be nurses and doctors. They were supposed to stay at hospitals to take care of the pilgrims, right? One group was supposed to protect them, the other group was supposed to take care of their health. So go to the next one. The ones we call the Knights Hospitales, they're the Knights of Malta today, and the foundation of the Cosa Nostra in all of the Western world. And the Knights of Malta still operate like a nation state today. And they were given the island of Malta because when they left, when they got driven out of the Middle East, they went to Malta and they were able to hold their ground, a very small number because of the ecology against a very larger Islamic force. And these Knights of Malta worked with the Catholic Church and with the kings of France and of other areas to destroy the Knights Templars. But the Knights Templars, many of them got away, and they're the ones that founded what we know as Freemasonry from the Western perspective, from England and Scotland. This can't be had, but this is about Richard the Lionheart, the King of England, leading the Crusades in 1186. Go to the next one. And then he ran into this guy called Salahuddin in 1187, July 4th, which is a strange day. That's when Salahuddin beat the heck out of him at this place called Hattin. Now this Salahuddin is what the Arabs put up as his facsimile of today. Go to the next one. Another Salahuddin destroyed the Frankish nobles, that's the French, and the Templars, Hospitales, and even the Germans, I forgot what they were called. Go to the next one. And they drove them off of, out of the Middle East. The Templars, the Hospitales, and the Frankish nobles seeking refuge in Cyprus. Go to the next one. Now, Salahuddin, holding this white guy, as painted in the 6th century by a Dutch painter. He paints Salahuddin as a black man. But the Arabs of today picture Salahuddin as a white man. Go to the next one. I have this photograph in my house. When Constantinople was taken, this is the Emir riding in on his horse, but he only comes in after the battle is won, led by this black general. This is one of those ancient black Arabs. Okay, so go to the next one. And this is, the areas in Africa which is ruled by Islam. I'll be doing my partners now. To the extent that Islam, while it was still under control by foreigners, this is the area that they were controlling in Africa. And Borneo, which is around this area right here, above Lake Chad, and between Lake Chad and Nigeria, was one of the major Islamic states during that period. And in Sheikh Abadia's book called the UN History in Africa, there's some letters where he's writing this, the Ottoman Sultanate in Turkey saying, well, we're both Muslims, so why are you coming out raping my man and taking my people as slaves? This is the black Muslim talking to the white Muslim. Because what begins to happen at this time, there's a war between the black Muslims and the white Muslims. But whether we like it or not, Elijah Muhammad had it right. You should have paid more attention to that old man. Even though he made mistakes. Go to the next one. And then what would follow that is this. Africa, Sahara Desert, Diego Gomez, and this is his route. When he bumped into the rest of us, when we taught him how to use a particular sail that would allow him to navigate the wind currents around that part of Africa. Go to the next one. And then we run into Bartholomew Diaz and his boys in 1482. Go to the next one. Go Vasco da Gama. Now they would paint him landing in Africa with all this wealth, but yet they would say we were enslaving barbarians. These are paintings out of their museums and stuff. Right? Go to the next one. And this is the Gama's voyage as he went around Africa all the way to India and back. Go to the next one. Elmina back in 1480, and the castle, the oldest slave dungeon in Africa, there's the Elmina slave dungeon, and Christopher Columbus helped to build that slave dungeon. He worked on his father-in-law's ship, who was a slave and a trade ship at that time. And there, they would meet the young man from Elmina who would become the navigator on the ship that would lead them to North America, or to the Americas. One was. Of course, Columbus landing in America, and the rest becomes history. So that's good. I was just trying to walk you all through a lot of stuff real quick. I know that was a lot. So that's the end of my lecture. Slave trade. And they are the ones that have the system in place that will hook up with the Christian Europeans that make the slave trade, what we end up calling the transatlantic slave trade, possible. So we can't, because a lot of us are Muslims. A lot of us came here as Muslims, believe it or not. When we got on the slave ships, we were Muslims. We had the white Muslims selling us to the white Christians. And if you want to see this in modern classic history, look at the invasion of the Sudan under Muhammad Ahmed, the Mahdi, by the white, Arab, Turkish Muslims of Egypt working with the British. And you'll even see further where Ethiopia makes a critical mistake when Abdullah would take over after the Mahdi is killed, and the French would march from the west, having many of us now fighting in their armies. And when he reached out to Ethiopia for help, Ethiopia claimed their alliance to Christianity and left the eastern flank open, which caused the loss of the life of Abdullah and a lot of his soldiers. But one of the greatest battles in the history of Africa, winning a war, was the Mahdi of Sudan killing 10,000 British soldiers in one day and taking the head of their primary general, and their captain was Gordon. I mean, literally.
Let's give Brother Smalls another hand. Wow. Thank you. We call this time dilation. You look up and you say, wow, where did the time go? Because you wish there was so much more time, but he'll be back. Brother Mshadisi Jehudimas, we haven't really had the pleasure of hearing him fully through, but we are. He said, I just appreciate your coming, and he has come to be a part of the lecture series, even in introduction.
Y'all don't really know what it said. That you have among you. Stand up, brother. I know. It's not, but people need to know, because they need to know who the real teachers are in the community. This man teaches the meta-nature. Not just the meta-nature, he knows our spiritual system. He understands it. A lot of people know how to play around the periphery of it. He understands it that way. But you gotta be listening to your little spirit flying all over the place and stuff. So, you talking about, he's the most humble brother I know. If you see him, you think he's just selling his little stuff out there at the table. This is one of the strongest spiritual leaders we've got in the black community in New York, and y'all need to know that, and y'all need to recognize.
Not only just on a physical, spiritual basis, but the brother is a 7-degree black belt world champion, twice kicked the Chinese butt, twice. He's a bad brother, on and off the field. Now, I want to recognize a man that I truly admire and respect. The reason that we have these lecture series here is because of Dr. Johnny Ray Younger. He not only gives us the space, but he pays for the lecturers. we start at 7 and we end at 9. No, I'm not, we're not going to have any questions, so we have time. I want to do two things. I want to ask Dr. Youngblood if he'd come up, and we just want to recognize him and give him the mic, and anything he has to say, we want to hear. I will say this as he's coming. Reverend Master Musa Barashingo, I think you all know who he is. He used to have these series, and he would invite all the preachers, all the imams, all the business people to come together just like this. And then he would invite people like Professor Smalls and Jeffers and everybody. And they would lecture, and afterwards we would discuss how do we incorporate this learning material into our sermons, whether they're in the church, whether they're in the mosque, but how do we work this material so that our people can benefit from it. And Reverend Youngblood, I was watching him. I mean, this is some heavy stuff for a preacher to really sit, absorb it, and be able to handle it, and to go forward with it. So I'm just appreciative of him deeply, and I want to give him the mic, and we want to respect you, sir.
Welcome to Mount Pisgah. And we opened the doors and we rendered support because it's worth it. Dr. Smalls, you got it, man. Yeah. Minister Brown is talking about, me being a preacher here and sitting under Dr. Smalls. Just like y'all don't think y'all like everybody else. I ain't like everybody else either. I can be me. Yeah. All right? I'm just a Muslim that never left. My mother and father and others who were committed to the church. I know about the white indoctrination, but you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I decided to stay and make the church what I believe it should be to our people. So that's something that drives me. Second thing is the reason I limit the hours is because some of y'all got jobs. I didn't say all of us, but some of y'all got jobs. And you need to keep them. Amen? And the other thing is that our recovery is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So what we're doing now is just experimenting with how to take this thing farther and farther and farther. So just know, again, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. All right? And I'm excited about what's going on. I'm grateful for my people who are supportive and others, who come, and y'all keep coming. It's going to happen. One of the things I am going to want by the end, which is August the 18th, is I'd like for you to put something in writing in terms of an evaluation, all right, so that we can steadily improve, all right? Now, do not find all faults. Am I clear? Well, you should have done this. Monday morning quarterbacking can be done by everybody, all right? Talk about what's good about it first, and then suggest some things that we can work on. All right? And do not suggest yourself as a lecturer. Let us decide.
Thank you. Reverend Dr. C. Her Oliver, 91 years old. The man who told black people to stay out of downtown Birmingham, Alabama, and buy nothing. Keep your money in your pocket. Is a part of this lecture series. He's a part of the foundation of it. And I just want to recognize him. We have 3 minutes. Our drummers want to do the national lift every voice and sing. We got to get that in. And a brother Marie, who's African artifacts and who is he's a collector. I have people ask me where I get my stuff from. A lot of my stuff I got from this gentleman right here. So I invited him to come by today. His cards are up here. You can take them. Let us all stand. Where did Reverend Youngblood go? Oh, he went under? All right, we're going to have to find somebody else who can sing, lift their voice as well as he does. Oh, here she is. Come. Oh, one other thing. I want you to take any small bills you got, because these brothers come and they play every week. And generally I pay them, but this week I run out of money, and I really don't have no money to pay them, and they're not included in the pay. They don't get paid unless I pay them. So I'm going to ask you to take some money out and give it to me so I can pay them. Thank you.
Okay, this is another solo act, so everyone get in on it. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven rings with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the flame that the dark past has brought us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat and not a weary feet, come to the place for which your father's died. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, God who has brought us thus far.
Thank you. Good night.
Still taking it.
was here last week. You got it?
I do, but I didn't bring it.
Oh.
I left all the tapes.
Oh, okay.
Next week I have all the tapes and more.
Okay. All right, I'll get it. I'll get it.
Okay, let me get done.
Is it